guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today, 15 champions, 5 epic, 5 rares, and 5 legendary champions that I thought were pretty good. I maxed them out, and they ended up being better than I thought. Or maybe I was on the fence on the champions, and I maxed them out, and I used them, and hey, who knows? I'm actually using a lot of these champions in a few different areas inside the game. Before that, really briefly, just want to send a message of love, positivity, caring, understanding, empathy to those of you out there who need it. You know who you are. I feel like it's a weird time, not just in the world, but, you know, with some areas, COVID restrictions, or a lot of areas have been kind of eased up, and we kind of go back into the normal world, and it doesn't just click right back into place, does it? You know, and again, I know that not everybody can relate to this, but for me personally, I'm just, you know, speaking from experience, it's, I'm in a little bit of a funk right now, and it's despite all this stuff I'm talking to you guys about, but I feel like it's important not to always give the impression when I, you know, have these little chats with you guys that I have life all figured out, that I have happiness, that I have whatever, you know, all figured out. I don't, you know, and I just wanted to send, again, my love to you guys out there. Again, you know who you are probably, who need a little pick-me-up, you know, I know where you're coming from, and to some extent, you know, as much as a YouTuber can have this in relation to your specific life, and you know, little small changes in life, cultivating better habits, better, you know, mental habits as well, will go a long way. So again, just wanted to, you know, small note to you guys out there, because it's you know, life can be tough, it can be awesome too, it can be tough too. So anyway, guys, we're gonna start out with, let's go legendary first here. We got Fushon. Fushon I spoke about on a few videos ago, or a video ago with Layla Fox, and when we got to Fushon, I forgot who it was, but somebody, one of you guys, thank you so much, by the way, I do check out the comments, and somebody let me know that Fushon was a real beast, low-key nuker, and this is a while ago, probably 2 years ago, and I was like, well, I have Fushon guarding my vault, I'll pull him out, see what he can do, and boy, this guy does smack. He was my second champion fully empowered, so I'm super dirty pay to win with this dude, and that helps, right? But with that said, he can hit really, really hard, right? Hard hitting A2 with a stun, a la Souldrinker. He has decreased defense 4 times at random. Kind of a simple hit, 25% chance to proc an extra turn on the, or extra hit, excuse me, extra turn will be OP, on the A1. And then he has a speed aura in all battles. His base stats are really, really solid as well. Great multipliers. A good force affinity nuker, and there's only a few of them out there, you know, Kandrafon, Fushon, it's not that many, right? So, Fushon definitely better than I thought he was going to be, and you can run him as an Order lead too, which is really, really cool. The next one is going to be, and I talked about this guy a couple times now, I'll probably leave him off the next list because I don't want to belabor the point, but Nagdar the Headhunter in a Frenzy set is just something special, guys. This dude has, this is, you know, case in point why you can't look at reviews. Some of the most fun I've ever had. You know, fun is also something that should be, you know, a qualifier to how good a champion is, right? If you really enjoy, you know, the teams that you can assemble around those champions, the success that you can have, that ought to factor in. And boy, Nagdar the Headhunter, when I pulled this dude, I'm like, who the heck is he? Is he a legendary? It was right after he had been added to the game. Nagdar the Headhunter, he could be the game's worst legendary, least talked about legendary in Raid Shadow Legends.
Did you ask God for forgiveness?
But now in a Frenzy set, he's one of the coolest champions. I have him in a Frenzy set, and basically, he's doing all of his damage to himself, and the turn meter goes up as HP decreases. So he's constantly kind of, the synergy between his kit, removing his HP, and then filling his turn meter, and then once he dies, he brings himself back to life anyway, as long as all allies are alive. Man, he can dish out just incredible damage. He also has an extra turn if he kills an enemy on a very hard-hitting, brutal verdict to A1. So a lot of the times, he's just like Energizer Bunny style, boom, 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 just killing everybody with his A1, going back into his A2. Again, turn meter improving because of the damage he's giving. He's just really, really unique champion who I've had a lot of fun with. Let me go to a legacy champion, an old school champion in the game. And this guy, I feel like there's two types of people in this world, people who love Cupids and people who hate Cupids and say he's a trash champion.
That ain't right. Shame on you.
I am definitely of the former, not the latter. Cupids is a beast, man. He's a companion champion to Venus, who obviously is better, but they're definitely different champions. Cupids is a DPS damage dealer, whereas Venus is a debuffer and a damage dealer. Anyway, he has HP burn on his A2. He's got a hard, super hard hitting A3 flame out. We're talking like, you know, anywhere from 200 to 500,000 damage, depending on the gear that you have on him against bosses. It's a lot of damage off of the flame out ability. And then he has an AoE on his A1. And it kind of got me thinking, guys, AoEs on A1s on single target nukers, to me, it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing that they can do to their kits. And it doesn't make them super broken or OP. You know, even like champions like Soulbound Bowyer, Banshee, whatever, there's rares that have, you know, kind of mildly hard hitting or even moderate or weak hits on their A1. But it opens up more possibilities, retaliation, stun sets, and just having an AoE A1 is beneficial in and of itself. So I love that he has an AoE on his A1. Damage increase as well. I wish they would do that to champions like maybe Errol. It doesn't seem like Errol should have an AoE in his kit because we've only known him to be a single target damage dealer. But some of those old single target legendaries especially, I feel like giving them a, you know, an AoE, even if it's a weak hitter on the A1, just opens up more possibilities with these otherwise kind of repetitive champions out there. Next is going to be Eleanor. I had, who was it? I think it was Boomer on the channel talking about Eleanor. And man, she's placing poison. I'll keep it simple. She's placing poisons. She has a burn on the A1, poison on the A2, and then combusts, deals damage from all poison debuffs to all enemies instantly. Right? There's no damage mitigation like Xavia. It's just straight out all poison damage. There it is, right? So she's on a lot of the fastest teams inside the entire world. When we're talking speed runs on Doom Tower, etc. Really, any speed run team, any of the traditional dungeons, you'll see Eleanor now with Calvalax, those type of teams. I don't have Calvalax, so I can't build exactly that team, but either way, she's a really good damage dealer. She's definitely an underrated champion in my estimation. Next up is going to be Suzerain Catan.
Suzerain Caton.
So Suzerain Catan is a very interesting champion who, again, an old school legacy champion. You know, look at that almost 1600 base attack and you're like, wow, this guy must smack. And he kind of does, but he brings a lot to the table too. First off is an ally attack in all battles by 33%. Strong aura for offense, and there's an AoE on every single ability, right? So an AoE, a la like Bellower, Biggin, Ray, right? On his A1, he has decreased speed. I really like that. 50% decreased speed on the AoE on an A1 is a really solid ability. On his A2, he's got the big version of Weaken. If that doesn't land, because it's only what, a 70% chance of landing, 80% my bad, chance of landing. If it doesn't land, he's got you covered. We're placing a decreased defense instead. You know, in a perfect world, we'd have them both. It is a 4-turn cooldown, but still, it's a solid ability, right? Solid debuff. And then we have Remove Shield, block damage, and unkillable buffs from all enemies that attacks them. Plays a heal reduction debuff on enemies, and the buff removal cannot be blocked or resisted. I really like that last sentence. It makes it very unique. So we have that buff removal. Again, shield, block damage, and unkillable that can't be resisted. We don't have to worry about accuracy on this particular ability. So overall, you can do so many things with Suzerain, you know, from stun sets to just being an overall damage dealer and debuffer. He's bringing a lot to the table, and I don't think that some people fully acknowledge how good this champion is, especially with the introduction of Hydra Clan Boss. All right, so those are the legendaries. Let's talk about epics, guys, and let's start with a champion that a lot of you guys still, because we mentioned him on, I think it was that same Boomer video, actually. I think he had him.
I'm bringing sexy back.
What is wrong with you? I mean, what is your malfunction?
Had her, excuse me, as one of his most underrated champions, and is Tanex Hayflower. She's a daily log and reward champion who a lot of people, even yours truly, I was wrong. Always admit when I'm wrong about a champion here on the channel, guys. I was very underwhelmed by her when they added her as a daily log and reward, what, year and a half ago, 2 years ago. But anyway, heals all allies by 3% of this champion's HP for each hit on targets under decreased speed debuffs. So, is actually a decent heal. 6% because we're 2 times. As long as they're under decreased speed, Demon Spawn really lacks solid healers, right? Especially if you don't have Duchess, you're really feeling the pain when it comes to lack of healers. So she can be a pretty good healer, especially for Faction Wars. I used her as my main healer in Faction Wars. I didn't have Duchess at the time when I cleared it. We also have decreased speed. She's bringing it to the table here. And I have a 50%, but it can be booked up to 100% chance of placing decreased speed on all enemies for 2 turns if the attack is critical. So she's bringing decreased speed on all enemies 100% as long as it's a critical attack on a 3-turn cooldown, and then decreases damage taken by all allies by 5%. So again, I mentioned this on previous videos, but these damage mitigation passives, especially when you start putting 2 or even 3 of these champions on the same team, they can really add up, right? So 5% isn't as OP as, 15% or 20 or 25%, but still it's something, and that really does help, right? So I think that overall, Tanex, is she the best epic in the game? Of course not. But is she serviceable, helpful for a lot of players out there? I definitely think she is, especially that AoE decreased speed. You can definitely use that in progression until you unlock physics. All right, next up, we're going to go ahead and go with, let's go with, where am I looking here? Where am I looking? Lizardmen, Ash. Broadmah is not an Orgrin tribe. Broadmah! So Broadmah has a freeze on his A1. He has increased crit rate, increased speed, and turn meter of all allies on a 3-turn cooldown, albeit the weak version of increased speed, but this is all added to his kit. It used to be only crit rate. Lame, right? Now we have the increased speed there. We also have the turn meter, as I mentioned. They brought down the resurrect cooldown, I want to say, from 7 to 6 turns. Can be booked down to 4 turns. Either way, they gave him a buff that made him actually a really, really solid reviver. 2 random dead allies is solid on the 4-turn cooldown. Block damage as well on the revive allies for 1 turn. And the freeze can help you obviously CCing between cycling the cooldowns of his A2 and his A3. So definitely a very, very solid reviver that everybody in the game can get, right? Will certainly help you out a lot in faction wars with that aura as well. But even in other areas of the game where you just need a solid reviver, Void Affinity as well, I think that Broadmah is a lot better, and he's justified. I think that everybody is justified actually fusing him now, whereas before it's like, yeah, you can totally pass on Broadmah. The next one is, I'm going kind of deep on this one, guys. It's actually Barath the Blood-Soaked. So I bet nobody anticipated this champion was going to be on the list. I maxed him. There is a Force Epic only, I think, yeah, Force Epic only Secret Room in Doom Tower Hard in one of the rotations, and either that or it's a Barbarian Epic only. Either way, I didn't have many choices. So Barath, I was so impressed because I forgot, I watched a YouTube video on this guy when he came out. I forgot what channel it was, but they were really down on him. And then when I maxed him, I was like, wow, this guy's actually really, really solid. HP-based champion with a lot of base HP. So I think I threw him in a shield set. Why not, right? Just to help my team stay alive, especially if I'm not cycling on auto A1 abilities to have them all refreshed. Each of his hits has this unique kind of factor where the first hit does something, second hit does something. So we get a filling turn meter on the first hit. Second hit is decreasing turn meter by 10%. Not bad for an A1, right? On the A2, first hit shield on all allies equals 20% of the damage inflicted. Second hit heals all allies by 10% of the damage inflicted. So we get a shield and a heal on a 3-turn cooldown. We get turn meter on the A1. Then on the A3, first hit, decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. And chance of removing increased attack buffs from the target, sorry. And then the second hit has a chance of placing decreased defense for 2 turns, and a chance at removing increased defense buffs on the target. So, it's kind of cool to have the buff removal in there as well, but really, a 2-time hitter, and we have decreased attack and decreased defense as well. So, man, he's like a decent champion. Again, like the other ones, Broadmah and Tanex that we talked about so far, guys. Is he a game changer? No. But he's definitely a helpful champion for faction wars, like I said, for Doom Tower and those secret rooms. I was a big fan, especially this A2 to get the heal and the shield. Hard to find healers, and whatever that room happened to be, it was hard for me to find good support champions. So next up is going to be Cecilia. Cecilia, the solo queen. Just go check out YST's YouTube channel. He has like 3 or 4 videos on Cecilia. I have one as well. I will link it in the description below if I can remember to do so. Otherwise, you can just YouTube search Ash Raid Cecilia and it will come up. But she's like the solo boss queen now. Very unique kit. We could read through everything, but really it's this A3. Place a sleep debuff on an ally for 1 turn. Right? If there's no allies alive, it's just going to go right on her, right? So you put her in a toxic set. Put her in toxic. That's going to be dealing the damage. And then she's going to be putting sleep on herself, okay? On a 2-turn cooldown. So every other turn, sleep on herself. So heals the ally by 100% and completely fills their turn meter if the sleep debuff is lost due to taking damage from an enemy. I don't need to tell you guys how that's so amazing, right? As soon as the enemy attacks her, she's fully healing herself and filling her turn meter to full, ergo reducing the cooldown again of revitalizing rest, and it's right back up again. So we can just keep, you know, A1 toxic with poisons, and then boom, just keep fully healing, fully turn meter. It's really something very, very cool to see. And Cecilia is a champion that I maxed really not knowing what I was going to get from this champion. And she ended up being a very, very, one of my faves. I like any champion that can solo bosses. It means their kit is dynamic and interesting and a little bit unique. And I think that's all the case with Cecilia. Next up is going to be, but you didn't think I was going to have a bomb champion on the list, guys. Souldrinker. Souldrinker. We talked about we talked about Force Affinity Nukers in Fushon. And let me tell you, Souldrinker is a bomb champion that's not bad at all. He has decreased bomb debuff detonation on his A1. Same thing on his A2. 3 times at random, more decreasing bomb debuff detonation, which is really nice to have because we want those bombs to be detonated ASAP. We want that damage to be done. That way we can land more bombs on the target, right? On his A3, attacks all enemies 2 times on a 3-turn cooldown. Each hit has a 100% chance, when booked, of placing a bomb that detonates after 3 turns. So a 3-turn bomb is not great, but there's 2 of them. So he's placing 2 bombs, and then he's reducing their cooldowns on his A2 and his A1. But it keeps getting better here. His Set Ablaze passive places 2 bomb debuffs again on each enemy that detonate after 2 turns when this champion dies. So he dies, you revive him, he's placing bombs all over the place. Granted, it is a 5-turn cooldown, so you can't do it every turn, but as long as you have a robust reviver on your squad, you can just keep adding more and more bombs to the enemies, and 2 at a time after 2 turns on the passive is pretty cool. The last thing I'll say on Souldrinker is his multipliers are really solid anyway, right? So he can just be a solid nuker even without the bombs. So Souldrinker, I think that's the part that really impressed me. Kind of like Galkit, right? Another bomb champion who's not on this list. They're 2 bomb champions who are not completely worthless, even though bombs aren't meta right now. All right, the rares. We'll go through a little bit faster here on the rares. The first one is, well, I'm contractually obligated to put Ashwalker on the list, guys. He is me, after all, behind that hood somewhere in there, right? On the A1, well, the A1, whatever, right? If he kills an enemy, resets the Devastator, which is his A2. His A2 attacks 1 enemy. We have a really high chance here at a stun. What's 85% chance? Not bad at all, right? Not bad at all for 1 turn. Decrease the turn meters of all enemies by 10% if the attack is critical. So I really like that A2. I like that it's all enemies turn meter. On his A3, it's an AoE with the weak version of Weaken on a 3-turn cooldown. Backbreaker does have really good multipliers, and he has a speed aura in all battles. Not a lot of rares have this ability, so you can run him as an aura lead if you don't have a better option out there. Ashwalker, I was just impressed with the amount of damage he can bring to the table, and even though it's the weak version of Weaken, it's still nice to have if you only have a decreased defense champion on your team, right? He brings something. That's 15% extra damage on all enemies. Next up is going to be a champion that I have spoken about recently, and it's actually going to be Gear Grinder. He's a champion that I was not high on at all when he came out. I remember talking smack about him a little bit, being like, yeah, he's a pretty weak reviver. He's like a continuous heal, a heal on a 3-turn cooldown, kind of a meh heal, their max HP, not his, and then a revival on the A3 on a 5-turn cooldown on a single target, you know, dead ally. But something about him is sometimes simplicity is all you need, right? He's in there, he's healing every 3 turns, and then if anybody dies, he's reviving them. And he's easy to keep alive. His defense isn't great, but his HP is pretty great. And yeah, I just found that I'm using him more and more and more on rare-only secret rooms in Doom Towers. So again, that is kind of in the end game, but hey, I'm using him in the end game. So yeah, he impressed me. Next up is going to be a champion that I had to include on the list. It is Marquez. There she is. She's not an epic, even though she hits like one, maybe like a legendary. She's the hardest hitting a nuker for the arena out of all the epics in the game, guys. Crush the Weak, it's a 2-time hitter. Deals extra damage to enemies with the Weaken debuff. So as long as they have Weaken, the enemies, you can set her up too. It's not just the Weaken placed by her, right? So a Ryan the Conjurer, for example, setting her up in the arena with a Weaken, and then she comes in, Crush the Weak, hits almost as hard as Nagdar and Shrunda. It's insane. I'll try to remember to link that video for you guys as well, in case you're interested in seeing her in action. Damage based on defense too, so for a rare, she's fairly easy to keep alive. All right, next up is going to be Fellhound. Those of you who've been watching the channel for any amount of time, or for a while, excuse me, any amount of time, no, that's not accurate, Ash, know how much I really love Fellhound, man. I underrated how good of a campaign farmer is. Well, I knew he was good, but for a while I was just like, you know what? I have Queen Ava. She's running, 6, 7, 8 seconds per turn per campaign farm. I'm good. And then finally, one day randomly, I'm like, okay, I'll switch over to Fellhound. I have him. Let me just build him. And then he's like 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 5 seconds. And those few seconds, they really do add up, especially when you're grinding out XP. And he can be useful in Fire Knight as well. In other areas, I guess, if you're kind of in the early game, excuse me. So I think the overall Fellhound definitely impressed me. I knew I was going to use him when I built him, which is nice, but I just didn't know how refreshing, or I didn't fully, I guess, recognize how refreshing it was going to have to upgrade my campaign farmer after like 2 years of using the same champion. It was nice to do. It was nice to have. Next up is going to be not Shadowkin there, Ash. And last on the list, guys, is going to be my man, Kazaar Deepheart. I still think he's underrated a little bit, guys. I mean, he brings so much to the table for a rare champion. The only downside, and it's a pretty big one, is boy is he squishy with 12k HP and 870 defense. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Good news is he's really good, right? He has an extra hit and places a decreased speed for 2 turns if the attack is critical on the A1. So decreased speed, he's bringing on his A1. On his A2, an AoE with each critical hit fills the champion's turn meter by 7.5%. I love these sort of abilities where you're filling their own turn meter on an AoE attack. Just keeps him going more and more frequently. And then his A3, another AoE attack on a 3-turn cooldown. So I use Kazaar in stun sets, again, for a lot of these Doom Tower hard floors where the only way to win is really stunning or CCing all the enemies, provoking whatever, right? So we have increased accuracy on all allies for 2 turns, then attacks all enemies, and places decreased defense. Granted, it's the weak version, 30% decreased defense, but it's still nice to have, especially when there's not a ton of rares out there with the big version. Dagger, War Maiden, only War Maiden really on a guaranteed 3-turn cooldown or at least 100% land rate, right? So he is, void affinity, you don't have to worry about negative affinity matchups, and it's nice to have at least some version of decreased defense, especially even in the arena where sometimes that's all you need. Nukers nowadays, they can hit really, really hard. Sometimes a weak version of decreased defense, again, is all you need, and it's nice to have that increased accuracy at the same time. So guys, that concludes my list of 15 champions that I liked a lot more than I thought I was gonna like. Let me know give me one champion that you invested in, and then you kind of walked away thinking to yourself, wow, I actually like this champion a lot more than I thought I was going to. Let me know in the comments below, guys. Thank you for watching, and as always, take care, guys.